All right. Well, hi, everybody. My name is Nancy Sanchez. I am TPA's Community Engagement or Outreach Coordinator, and I'm excited to have you here today for a wonderful webinar. I'm going to quickly go through a couple of slides, and then I will turn it over to the wonderful Greg Wasserman. So today's webinar is in partnership with Greg Wasserman, who is also at rss.com and is also just a pro in the podcast ecosystem. He has done it all behind the mic. Looking forward to learning so much more about podcasting networks today. Upcoming events and important news with TPA, we would love for you to know. TPA Talent Connect is a new program initiative that we're running, and it's really helping put our members and everybody in the podcasting talent system, bridging them with the opportunity to grow their career. So check that out on our website. Session 2 of the mentorship program applications are open. This is for everybody and anybody. It doesn't matter where you are in your career. Make sure applications close June 30th, but the program runs August to November. I don't know why that says July to August. That's mine. And June 23rd, we have our speed pitch event with John Perotti from Rococo Punch. If you have a podcast idea that you are just dying to pitch, join us. You'll have 10 minutes. Think about it like speed dating to kind of pitch your idea and take it to the next level. Know someone that isn't a part of TPA and should join? Feel free to use promo code TPA26 for 25% off your first year membership. And these are all our social media handles. If you're not following us, we would love to have you join our family. And that's it for my end. Just a couple of kind of house rules. If you have a question at any point throughout today's webinar, please add it to the Q&A box. We will get to your questions at the later part of today's webinar. There's so much information to download, but we will definitely get to you at the end. But feel free to use the chat to add anything that we should know about, and I will make sure that Greg gets to see that. And Greg, we are so happy and excited to have you here. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Nancy and team, for having me here, and everyone for coming. Let me share my screen. There we go. All right. Well, Podcast Networks 101. Ultimately, should you stay, join, or build your own path? Let's give you some context here. While Nancy gave you a little understanding of myself, it's good to know where this is all coming from. So I was in ad sales for about 15 years, which is where a lot of my ideas from monetization of podcasting comes from. And then since 2021, I've been fully immersed in the podcast ecosystem. I ran 3 listening platforms. I worked for Cast Magic, which is an AI repurposing tool. I'm currently the head of relationships for rss.com, the podcast hosting platform. And I launched my own show, Podcast Network Insights. Besides that, I believe life is about time and relationships. I love connecting. I'm always giving back to the podcast community. So where did the foundation of this training really come from? It really came from like the belief that everyone thinks that networks are the answer. It's like this holy grail, but also that you usually take the first deal that comes to you. And that was frustrating to me. I'd hear podcasters say, I joined this network and whatever complaints they had about the network. And I'm like, all right, well, there's got to be something. There's truth to it, but there's also the other side of it. But there's also the being unaware of all the other networks that are out there. So I started a show, Podcast Network Insights. I've released 14 episodes. I've done 21 recordings. I have hours of conversations. You just QR code you can scan to listen. But that's basically the basis from where this presentation and kind of the knowledge. So it's not a pitch about the show. It's more of an understanding, which kind of gives you what to expect from this webinar. First thing we're going to do is, what is a podcast network? Different kinds of networks. I've categorized them. The key piece I think I want you to take away from all of this is going to be a mindset shift. Going back to the understanding of where this training came from, we're going to focus on how do we shift your mind, reframe those expectations. And then I'm going to give you a list of questions to ask yourself when you're evaluating a network, questions to ask the networks, and then kind of a compass to evaluate your overall journey. This is great for whether you are a beginner, you're somewhere in the middle, you've been doing this for a while, you're evaluating, or you're just somewhere in the industry. I've kind of made this a basis for everyone. What this webinar is not, though, is I'm not going to give you a directory of networks. There are way too many, but the whole point, once again, is how do I help you understand that there's other networks out there? How to start a network. I can give you, especially through all the trainings that I've talked through all the conversations I've had, like I give you a basis of that, but that's not what this presentation is. We're going 101. That's why I said it's not exhaustive. It's basically a 101, maybe 201, depends on how you look at the academic world of what is a 101 versus a 201. And then I'm not here to answer the question, should you join or not? Because at the end of the day, that's going to be an individual conversation you have with yourself and finding the right network, which ultimately is kind of what I want you to walk away from this. So, with that said, um, let's look into this. What is a podcast network? So, I don't expect you to read all 6 of these quotes, but ultimately, every time I interview someone, I ask them a question. Hey, my show is called Podcast Network Insights. How do you define a podcast network? And every guest has answered that completely different. And that's what's unique about this is there's no right way to do a podcast. There's no wrong way. You could look at what the market's telling you, and that's the same thing from a podcast network. There is no right podcast network, wrong podcast network, way to operate a network. It really, once again, comes back to what's going to be relevant for the network operator and how they want to create that network. But then for you as a podcaster, what is just the right network for you? Some define it as ad stitching technology. Some define it as a community. At the end of the day, every person, an organization defines network, the value of it differently. And every single person I've talked to, and if you think about that, that is a key thing for you to keep in mind. Because if you're going, I need to join a network, but every network is operating differently, every network is thinking about their business differently, then you should start understanding what it makes those differences relevant for you. So stop looking for the best network and start looking for the network that offers the exact value your business needs right now. So with that, like most independent podcast networks, most independent podcasters dream of joining a network. And their imagination is it's siloed into what I would look at, and I know there's probably more names on this list, but these are like what most of us think about from the household names regarding a podcast network. iHeart, NPR, PRX, part of it, right? Sirius. Like, if these companies, rightfully so, have done an amazing job on building a brand, and that brand is then in our mind in terms of like, oh, this is what a network looks like, or this is the network I want to join. But the problem is there's so many more networks out there that if your conception of a network is those on this list, then you're missing out on other opportunities. So before we map out the specific categories and types of networks there are, we have to break that bias that keeps independent creators trapped. When most podcasters dream of joining a network, their imagination's siloed. So let's look at, oops, let's look beyond that. And on this screen here, you can look at, this is literally a screenshot. I typed in podcast network in my Apple Podcast on my phone, clicked on the channels button, and you could see all these different channels. And what you're seeing here is just 10 that I pulled, and there's so many more. And these may be names you know, names you don't know. But the whole point is the first slide, names you probably did know. But if you limit yourself to just those, then you're missing out on all these other opportunities, these highly structured boutique networks that could be the right fit for you. So, which path to take? Do I join? Do I stay independent? Or do you create your own, which is, in a sense, how most of these network operators have actually evolved from having their own podcast to creating their own? So, that is the path. Let's take a look. So, I looked at my conversations and I bucket them into 7 different categories. Once again, this isn't exhaustive. There's others, and worth noting that just because I'll give you examples, I'm bucketing things into these 7, you'll find that they kind of mix and match. But overall, based on the central idea of this network, we can group them into one of these 7 different categories that I've come up with. So, first one that most of us think of is ad monetization. It's a network where how do I make money? It goes back to why I laid out the foundation of I started my career in ad sales. Literally, my job was dedicated to finding to work for brands and work for agencies and figure out how do I get media dollars, right? And that's what most of us in podcasting think of. The holy grail is join a network and how do we make money from sponsorships? Because look, if you could tell your mom, I got $3,000 from Airbnb, that's going to make you feel really good. Your mom can go and say like, oh, my kid is getting sponsored by Airbnb. But if you can make 100 grand by doing something else through your podcast, that's probably going to be a lot better than 3 grand from Airbnb. But ad monetization is what most of us think about. Focus for these networks is truly how do they take your content and sell it? Aggregate it, whether it's from a group of shows, your specific show. There's structures around ad inventory, programmatic, sponsorships. And because of that, the trade off is usually the rev share. So you're giving up, of course, I'm going to pay some, or I'm going to give some of my percentage of what you sell for me to you because you did the work. It's ultimately what most of us think of. But let's look at the other 6. Community is a huge one. Creator community mastermind. Like what I love about podcasting is literally community. I mean, that is kind of the core of what makes us unique from an industry. And so community network is the focus on connection, peer support. Maybe we're like, I just need other people that I can work with. So the example, apologize, I forgot the example in the previous one. But example here is conversation with Becky Mellencamp from the Feminist Podcast Collective. Becky's whole thing was is she just needed a group of people that she could come together, fellow podcasters, do cross promotions, learn from each other, train from each other, and create that the community feel. That was the point of this network. So if you're looking for a network where, hey, I want that, that is the core for what I need right now, then that is going to be a big piece for what you are evaluating when you're looking at a network. Next one, niche focus. As I said, all these can be cross promoted, and you can say, well, a niche in the community exists, but once again, we're only going to focus on the niche piece here. And the category of that is a network type that ultimately is looking around a specific niche. In this regards, Jethro has the B Podcast Network. Niche is education. If you are in the education space, if you're trying to talk to people within education, that is going to be it. It's going to make a lot of sense for you to go like, hold on, these are my people. They know what I'm speaking about. From an advertising standpoint, it's easier to sell because you're all aggregated in that. There's curation, discovery is all around a specific contextual alignment. Once again, you could have niche with the monetization, those who exist, but the core piece of a niche focused podcast network is I'm aligned with the mission, the focus of what this does. Next one would be production. There's a lot of networks out there where the core piece is they're ultimately a production company. And a production company understands, look, you can pay me to produce your show, but if you're not growing your show, you're going to end up leaving. So as part of my production value, I've created this network. So everyone with inside the production that I'm producing is part of this network ecosystem. So we can learn, we can grow, we can cross promote, and I can ultimately help you grow your show. They may recruit it as a white glove production service to existing shows. And they also have, hey, you know what? If I don't produce your show, you can still join because they're niche, they're focused. But ultimately, they're looking at how do I produce your show? And so the example here is my conversation with Richard Butler from the RageWorks. RageWorks is, lack of better words, pop culture, nerd culture, gaming culture. So it's niche in that regard, but he produces all of those shows. And that's part of the value. He knows what he's doing. He knows how to produce this. He takes some of that off your shoulders, and he's able to provide value that way. Next one would be the distribution expansion. So everyone loves to talk about how do I get more. Actually, not enough people are talking about it. Distribution is a big piece. So in podcasting, the joys of an RSS feed is you're able to actually have your show distribute to wherever it is, not just Apple, Spotify, and Amazon, but all these others. Like I said, I started my career actually running 3 podcast listing platforms. But there's more to distribution besides just the RSS feed. How could I get distribution that takes me on fast channels, which are like a Roku channel? How do I get onto newsletters, blogs? How do I take my content and get more distribution than just the audio component? And so there's networks that actually will go beyond the audio and say, hey, by joining this network, you now get access to the media component that we have, the brands that we've got access to, the TV components that we've built the technology and have the shows and the marketing around it. It's allowing you to get into front of a larger audience. So Jeffrey Hazlitt with the C-Suite Network, their business network, they do so much more, but a big function of the network distribution is, hey, they give you access because Jeffrey comes from the TV world. So how to make it work within a TV distribution. Next one would be the hosting driven network. So I work for RSS.com. So a good example could be, hey, all shows, I don't care where you host, you have to leave your host and join the network which hosts with RSS.com. Because by doing that gives you the operation, and it's a big component to what the network is providing. By having everyone under one technological operation, they can work faster, more efficient. They can help you in the ways that the operation of that network works. Good example here is Pantheon and Peter. So Pantheon is a music podcast network, so niche, but his whole thing is from a technological standpoint. He understands by joining his network, putting you onto his hosting service, it's going to allow him to handle the host read ads at scale, the programmatic at scales, the operational component at scale. So there's a key piece to that, but also, as it says here, exit or independence depends somewhat. Can you take your feed elsewhere? You know, most will say that, but those are questions. We'll get into it to think about. Do I love my host? Do I want to leave my host and go to another company? And they could say like, oh, hosting's just something. I work for a hosting company. Trust me, they are all different. So if you are comfortable with where you are at and you don't want to go there, then maybe that's a red flag. Like, this is not the kind of the network that I want to join. And the last one, the seventh one that I've kind of grouped here would be the talent network or in-house. And this is where, and what I love about this is you're not giving up complete creative freedom, but you're ultimately saying, I'm a talent for hire. And this is where a network is saying, I understand the shows we want to produce. We've created the brand equity. We have the marketing around this. And we're going to add you into managing a show. And you can look at this kind of like the radio stations hiring a DJ, where they've done all the marketing. They're the ones that are working hard to market the show, and then they're slotting you in there. So at the end of the day, you're building your brand off of their brand. You are doing great work for the show that you manage under their brand, but you're in a sense contracted. You're hired from them. And the joys about something like this is, good example, oil and gas with Mark LaFleur. So oil and gas, the OGGN network, they own all their shows. And so they're out there trying to find who can speak about a certain topic, and they're managing, the back end systems, they're managing the production, and you're able to slot in there and go, I can speak great about this topic. And what's amazing about that is now you don't have to do the hard work. You still have to do work, which we'll get into, but you don't have to do the hard work of branding, building a brand, building a network, building all these components, because this network is doing it for you. And now you can focus on all the other things. So another network, which I haven't spoken to on the show, but Locked On, that's a whole thing. It's a sports network. And if you were like, I would love to talk about sports, or from Chicago, so I would love to talk about Chicago Bears. and I could sit here and try and do my Chicago Bears show and brand it and compete against all these other Chicago Bears shows. Or if I'm a really good host and have great energy, great, I could join the Locked On Network and they'll go, hey, we're going to make the Locked On Chicago Bears hosted by Greg Wasserman. And now I'm part of that ecosystem, part of their brand. Once again, it really depends on what you're looking for. The end of the day, this is what I love. This is if you take nothing away from everything I'm going to talk about today, this is the slide. There is no magic bullet. There's only consistency. So take a breath, like pause, look at that statement, read it twice, because no matter which of these types of networks that you align or I'm talking about, like you have to do the work. Every one of the networks I've talked to, every podcaster I speak to, at the end of the day, the work comes on you. So while I talked about the talent, talked about the monetization where they're going to do it, at the end of the day, you have to be the one that's showing up, putting out good content, continuing to consistently improve the questions you're asking, the content you're putting out there, the marketing, um, what you're providing to the network. Because if you look at these, there is no magic bullet. It's not, I'm going to join a network and all of a sudden I'm going to grow my show. I'm going to get all this monetization. I'm going to get all this money. I'm going to get uh, all this community component. If I join a community and I'm not actually part of the community, I'm just in the community, you're not going to get anything out. You still have to be the one that shows up, maximizes the questions you're asking in the community, the information you're sponge and soaking it up. So no matter what, you have to do the work, which comes to, are you actually clear on your goals? Like to determine which network makes sense for you, to why you are podcasting. Do you understand? Are you really honest about your underlying motivations? Are you clear on your goals? Why do I want my show to grow? How do I want my show to grow? Do I want to make money? Do I want to get sponsors? Like these are the typical questions, but there's so many more. It's like, what are your goals? Do you really know why you're doing your podcast? If the right podcast network can help you achieve more than these simple goals, do you know why you're doing this? What am I willing to contribute? That goes back to the previous slide. What am I willing to do? Because at the end of the day, every one of these networks is, in a sense, running a business, whether it's nonprofit, community based, or you're paying into this, it is a business. And they want people who are going to be showing up and contributing to the values of that business because they're truthful about why they're doing this. And they don't want to just take someone who's not going to be committed. And you don't want to join somewhere and be upset that, like, hey, my expectations weren't met. So understand why you're doing this. So let's understand your why. And I've broken it into three different categories: the attention strategy, the authority strategy, and the business strategy. So the attention strategy is kind of your first network. I am doing a podcast to drive downloads at scale so I can go sell my audience and sell to brands. Like I'm doing this so I can get 10,000 followers and I can make a lot of money on programmatic and sponsorships and I've got something to sell there. And that is it. I'm doing this for fun, quote unquote. I use phone in that regards, but I'm doing this to because I love doing this and I want to build a brand. I want to be an influencer, for lack of better words, in that regards. There's the authority strategy, which is I'm doing this to build thought leadership, to get speaking gigs, to get consulting, to find a new job. Like I tell people, hey, if you want to get a new job, start a podcast, start interviewing the people in the industry you want. Next thing you know, you've got the relationships there, as opposed to let me go cold call people and say, hey, I would love to have an informational interview so I can figure out if I can get a job there, right? Like you're doing this for lack of better words, the ROI, the payoff is around that authority, the value you're getting there. And then the business strategy. I'm podcasting because this is going to generate leads for my business. And that is it. I am not here to try and get sponsors. That is secondary. The core piece, if I can make money, if I can make 100 grand, I'm bringing in people into my show, generating leads. to my existing services, that is going to pay me far more than me now trying to go do the attention strategy. And that's what a lot of people do. They're trying to figure out, how do I do the attention strategy? But the core is actually the business strategy, and they get confused. And if you don't know the answer to that, then you're not going to sure which actual network you should be looking at and joining. So now we've kind of hopefully changed our mindsets in understanding the different kind of networks. We've got an understanding of like, why am I doing this? Why am I podcasting? And what value would joining a network be for me? Well, now let's start asking ourselves these questions. So I broke them into 9 different categories. There's a QR code. The questions on the screen, there's so many more that have broken into each of these 9 categories. So go ahead, scan the QR code, and you'll get a document with all of these questions in there. But ultimately, fit and mission. Are you understanding what is right for you? What is the mission, the purpose, and the focus of this network? Are my values aligned? Is this what I'm looking to achieve? Does this speak to me? Also, remember, with every one of these questions, discomfort is a good thing. So lean into this comfort of going like, do I really want that? That feels uncomfortable, but like, yeah, that is, right? Onboarding, offboarding. What is their process? What does that look like? Are you just, hey, you just got quickly you moved your podcast from one host to their host, and that's it. And you're like, well, what else is there? And then what's the offboarding? Are they going to make it really difficult for you? Ownership control. Do I retain that ownership of my content? Am I signing that away? Is that part of the contract I'm putting over? Am I just a hired host? Monetization. This is the one everyone loves. It's not even top of my list. But how do I add sales? How do sponsors? Key thing I've saw, and once again, why I started my show and where this presentation leads from is 6 months into a network, which is focused on monetization, podcasters are like, they're not selling my show anymore. Well, key thing to keep about and understand is they're all businesses. And you, just like your show and your business is constantly evolving, every one of those networks that I talked about, every one of those businesses of network styles are changing. So do you understand where their business is? And so maybe 6 months later, you're no longer the new kid on the block. You're not growing and they're struggling trying to sell your show. Or maybe they were able to sell it originally, but now the advertisers that they're talking to don't want your audience, don't want your style, don't want your show. These are all great questions to understand. Discovering growth. What are the strategies that you're doing? But what are the strategies that's network, right? Like, what is the network doing to grow? And what are they doing to help you grow? Analytics reporting. What analytics do I get across? What access to? Sorry. Uh, and if you're used to hosting your own show and having access to your own platform, your own host, you know what you get access to. Well, what do you get now if you go join this network? What maybe more do they have that they're able to provide you because they're a network and they're able to scale? Support and operations. If you care about this, if you go back to the production network style, like, what value am I getting? What tech support? What understanding? If I look at a network in some regards to be like, my day job is X. I do this because I love this. Your day job as a network is to actually understand the podcast ecosystem. So I'm going to rely on you to teach me about what I don't know, and I'm going to go and do it myself. But maybe that network isn't doing that. Community collaboration. I don't have to beat that one. We've already talked about that. And cost. Not every network has a cost. Some are free to join. Some actually, hey, you've got to pay $2,000 to join their network, but what's the value you're getting out of that? Some it's like, hey, it's free, but the rev share. So understand what you're willing to give up and what those costs are. And then the red flag checklist. So same PDF on the bottom of that, I've got a red flag checklist. All of these questions are ones that you have to ask, but the red flag ones you still be asking, but like for you, it may not be a red flag. Is there a lack of clarity on who owns your feed? Maybe you're like, I don't care. Is there a clear path for discovery? Maybe you're like, that's not a big deal for me. Maybe that once you've asked the questions to yourself and understand, what am I trying to do with my show? What value? Where do I want to take this? The red flags are pertinent to you. Hence why I said I can't answer the question, should you join or shouldn't you join? You know, based on the questions I'm giving you, kind of what makes sense for you. So we kind of talked about joining a network, but let's look at value of staying independent because there is huge value in it. Broken into three different categories here: absolute sovereignty, agile of operations, and uncapped financial. So you retain absolute sovereignty. You retain 100% ownership, creative autonomy, complete control over your RSS feed and your IP. Maybe that matters to you. Maybe that's where you're at in your podcast journey. Like, I don't want to join a network, or you're going to look at the right network that allows you to have that sovereignty, but still join. Those exist, but you want to stay independent. Great, agile. I don't have to deal with operations. I don't have to deal with anyone else. It's complex. I know what I know. I know how to do this. I don't want to deal with anyone else. I want to manage it. Or maybe you hired people and you're like, great, I have my own team. Why do I need their team or a network's team to do it? I'm going to go find the people and I'm going to do that. And it allows you to stay independent. And of course, the uncapped financial. If you join a network that's doing a rev share, hey, you're giving up money. So if you think you can sell your own show, then great. Most of the time, we can sell our content far better than someone else. Now, the value of potentially joining a network is the aggregate. So, like, you could sell it, but we can get more money when we all come together and we've got the economies of scale. You trying to call a media buyer, an agency, and going you versus a network who's got 100 shows. You could sell it, but you have to know the right people. And maybe for you, the uncapped potential and the ability to sell that is key. Maybe you're like, I joined a network for the first year. They helped me. I got the relationships. And then a year later, you're like, you know what? I'm going independent. Those are all things you're able to do. And the last one here. So we've talked about joining a network. We've now talked about the value of being independent, but you can create your own network. So I've got a quote here from Jeremy from the GMZ network. And once again, I ask every one of my guests, if you were to start a network today, what would you do? And I love what Jeremy had to say here because it's kind of what Becky did. Becky wasn't getting access to a network. She's like, you know what? I'm just going to go create my own. And I'm going to create it the way that I want to be around other people. So you can actually go ahead and create your own network. Maybe there's nothing out there for you right now, or the way you operate from a business, you're an entrepreneur. I mean, we're all entrepreneurs when we're doing a podcast, right? Maybe you're like, you know what? I'm going to go find, as Jeremy said, go find 2, 3 people in my niche, in my category that I would love to bond with and go, hey, we can come together and we can create our own network. Maybe it's the tabletop game network. You're like, all right, I'm going to go find other people like me that love tabletop games. And we're going to create a network based on that because the other tabletop network out there doesn't align with me. And as I found through doing this, some of the networks were started because they used to be part of another network and it didn't align with their values, didn't align with the way they want to operate, didn't actually work for them. They weren't getting the value that they needed. So they're like, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and create my own. Which takes me to this proactive management. If you do choose to enter a network partnership, your primary operational framework must be proactive management. I see too many talented creators join a roster, stay completely silent for 6 months until their unspoken expectations aren't met, and then they abruptly leave. Or they talk to me and they're like, hey, I'm unhappy at this network. Where else should I go? Or what should I do? My answer is, have you told your network? Like, have you actually talked to the team that you decided to sign on and hire or connect with and go, I'm not getting what I thought I should be getting. I'm unhappy with where this is. Because at the end of the day, network operators, they're not mind readers. None of us are, right? We're all podcasters. We have no clue what our guests our audience is saying. And we're always trying to figure out that feedback loop. But from our standpoint, when you're looking at a network, you have to be proactive. Now, it's not only proactive about once you've joined a network, but it's proactive on answering the questions for where you are within your business. Am I being honest and faithful for myself and others, this isn't working for me, or I joined for 6 months and this met my expectations, and I've gone well beyond where this network can take me, and I think I need to go and join a different network, or I'm going to go solo, or you know what? I think I can do this better. I'm going to go create my own. So if you're in a network, please speak up. If you're not in a network and you're evaluating it, please be honest. Every network operator I've spoken to so far, and I know there's hundreds that I haven't to, so I've heard the stories, but they will all tell you they don't want you if you don't want them. Like, it's not good for their business. So please be mindful of those things. It is a great relationship and is a mutual understanding of we're coming together because this was a fit for you, and we said this was going to be. It's a partnership, right? Networks would rather have you not join or leave and go find another home than stay unhappy and then talk smack about them, because none of us want that, right? No one likes that 1-star review that we get on a podcast. Like, hold on, what is this person talking about? So have that open conversation. Oops. So let's take a look at I can't even say that, real world decision scenarios and help you understand. Maybe this is you. Maybe you see yourself in this conversation. So the scale play. It's a broad reach show, joined a large network to secure programmatic ad fills and production support. Maybe that's you. Maybe that's what most people are thinking. Like, I'm going to go ahead and I need to join a network to go and get me more money from sponsorships, get more money from the programmatic ads, because at the end of the day, I don't know what I'm doing. I know I can create great content. I know my day job, but this isn't my piece. So maybe you're like, great, I'm going to go join one of those networks that play into that scale. The trust. It's a niche show. You join a thematic vertical for B2B sponsorship access and expert peers. You're like, all right, I know I'm a business show. I'm going to go look for a podcast network that has other business like shows on there. And so it's going to be great because we can aggregate together. We're going to get the sponsorship dollars because we're coming. But really, the core piece here is that kind of community component. Because if I'm a B2B show and I can join another B2B show, we got great cross promo. But we also have the ability to work together from our day jobs. Our actual reason we may doing this, and go, is there partnership equity here? Is there value that we can come together? And of course, the solo play. A high personality brand states solo to keep 100% of the ticket for high ticket consulting leads. Like, I can join a network, but I'd rather just figure this all out, do this myself, and keep 100. There is no one size fits all. It's a core piece of this. There's hundreds of networks. There's millions of podcasts. There's no one size that fits all. So we start coming to the end here. I always love to include this slide in any presentation I'm doing, especially in the podcast world, because it's the compounding return of consistency. Like, looking at the numbers on this curve, if you make your show just 1% better every single day, improving your script structure, tightening your editing, or optimizing your audience relationships, that effort compounds exponentially to make your show 30 times more better by the end of a single year. Great English, I know. Sorry. Independent or part of a network, no platform construct that momentum for you. I went back to that earlier. You have to do the work. There is no magic bullet. Your growth is built on your consistency and your effort to make that viable podcast that serves your needs, but always those of your listener. So when you start thinking about how you want to disseminate the content, not just the podcast itself, this will force you to become a better host. Natural flow can still happen, but understand what value you need to provide your audience and why they tune in. I work with podcasters and we look at what questions they should be asking that align with the value they want their audience and how they want to consider the content that comes out. You start thinking about the conversations you have, the questions you want to ask your guests, the information you want to highlight, share your style. It will all make you a better host. And at the end of the day, no matter what you do, stay independent, join a network. All these things are on you. And if you do all these small little things, by the end of the year, you can only look and go like, wow, I achieved a 38 times growth, even if your download numbers weren't 38 times higher. Even if your money wasn't 38 times higher, there's nothing but growth in podcasting. So as I said, this is a 101. I'm not here to give you all the insights, how to help you create a network if you want it. But if you're interested, there's QR code. There are currently 14 episodes. Each one of these network operators has operated their network completely differently, but they've all started from a podcast. They've all realized, you know what? I'm a podcaster at first, and this is how I'm going to operate my network. This is how I'm thinking about business. And each one of these stories is different in that regards. And then if we look at starting your journey, if you are looking to start a network, I mean, you can. RSS.com, we've got a network plan. Host as many shows as Jeremy said. Hey, go find a couple of your friends. Go, great. We can save some money by we aggregate together. We host on RSS.com. We all just saved our individual hosting. And how do we help each other and grow? Like, there's so many different ways you can go about this to start your journey, to think about what makes sense for you. With that said, we're coming to the end here. I'm Greg Wasserman once again. There's my email. I live on LinkedIn. QR code there's my LinkedIn. I believe, once again, life is about time and relationships. You have no clue where one conversation is going to take you. I mean, that's also why I love podcasting, right? Like, we have no clue whether it's a solo episode, whether it's editorial, whether it's a friction, where any of that conversations that we're having, any of that audio that's coming is going to take us. So please reach out. I'm an open book. I love talking. As the team here knows, I network for a living, and I love that. So thank you guys so much.
Greg, thank you so much. That was very informative. Thank you for your time. We are ready to move on to the Q&A session, and we already have some questions here for you. So let's
All
get
right.
started. Can you see the Q&A
Yeah.
box?
Oh, yeah. I get Stephanie. We got a bunch here. For niche podcast network, should I prioritize audience alignment or audience purity? For example, all the shows serve artists and creatives, but one podcast gets 5,000 downloads per episode, another gets 250, another gets 1,000, another 100. Is that a problem for sponsors, or is shared audience more important than having? Great question, Stephanie. And the answer for probably every question is going to be it depends. So if we go, I think I'm still sharing my screen, right? Yeah. Uh, right, Nancy, we're still sharing the screen.
Yep.
Yeah, great. So I'll use this as a great slide. So if I look at Jason Falls, oops, Jason Falls and the Marketing Podcast Network. The way his network operates is, regardless of your size, everyone takes a shared split of revenue that comes in. So if you're a 5,000 podcast and you're 5,000 download podcast and 100 download podcast, you're all splitting the revenue equally. If that is something you don't like, then that is not the right network for you. If you're like, great, I don't care so much about the fact that I've got 5,000 downloads and I'm only getting a fraction because I have to split that money with someone else, then you're not going to join. But if you're like, but by being part of that network, at the core, I don't care about the sponsorship dollars. That is insignificant compared to the access I get from the 80 shows that are on that network, all dealing with marketing, that now allow me to actually make more money on the marketing services I offer, or the consulting I'm able to do, because I do SEO and someone in the network does paid search, or sorry, paid influencer. So when someone comes to me and say, "Hey, I need help with influencer," you're like, "Well, I don't do influencer." You can pass them off to someone there, get a referral fee. So it really comes back to, what is it that you're trying to do? Why am I doing this? But that is a great question, and each one of these network operators, because of the way they're operating, may be a fit for you or may not be. If I want to have a network, so next question, if I want to have a network of similar shows, what's a good number to start with? Two, three, whatever you want. I mean, at the end of the day, if you're going to start your own network and you're going to put in the effort, then you have to think about who's joining, how much operational work I'm going to do. So if we go back to Becky Mullenkamp, I'm blinking on how many shows are in her network, but ultimately she's got a sliding scale, $5 to $25 to pay to get into the network. She's got education, she's got a community component, but ultimately it's got to start somewhere. So if you're like, great, I can go ahead and start with three and start branding there. What it will say, and I didn't call this out in the presentation, but uh, um, one of the networks, he started as a solo show, but he knew he wanted to start a network based on the niche that he was in. And so he started, when he first started, he created the what is it, Horse Radio Network. And then his show, the one show he had, was part of that Horse Radio Network. Well, for the first year, it was just his show, but he created a bumper and he knew, great, let me go ahead and create this niche, equestrian, equine, yeah. And he already knew that's what he wanted to do. So if you want it, you could start today, Stephanie. Is like whatever network you wanted to create, start branding it as that. Your show's part of that network, and then you start adding people as it comes along. But once again, it comes down to what are you trying to achieve? 10 shows in that network. Are you trying to achieve sponsorship value? Are you trying to achieve niche? What is it that you're looking for? Um, Hopefully that answers that. And then the last one, when do you bring a lawyer into the mix or do you just use a simple agreement? Ooh, great one. I have not had the lawyers on the show yet, but as my last guest I just talked about, he started lawyers early. That actually allowed him to sell his network when the time came years later because he had all the contracts. He buttoned everything up. Everything was contractually about the network itself, and then with all the individual hosts. So if you were Gordon Firemark or Lindsay, they would both say, as lawyers, always bring in a lawyer, always dot your I's, cross your T's, and have that in the mix. At the same time, not every one of these network operators has done that, so it's going to be a comfort, something that you would be interested in. Do I want to go down this path? Am I willing to spend the legal fees up front before I've even made money? That's going to be a comfort thing, but every lawyer is going to tell you yes. I know from a lot of the education we do at rss.com, and I have to imagine with TPA is CYA, making sure that you have the brand. Nothing's worse than hearing the story of I started a podcast and then 2 years later realized someone else had the name of that podcast and I had to change my podcast, right? So make sure that you are taking care of yourself in that regards. I think those are the only questions there. Were there any questions in the chat that I'm missing? As a lawyer, I have to agree. Oh, there we go. As a lawyer, I have to agree. Now more than ever with AI, you want to understand you're protecting your IP. There you go. Am I missing any? Oh, we got miss. Nope, no questions.
Nope, I was looking over too. Are there any other questions? This is your shot. This is your time. Take advantage.
If not, there's find me on LinkedIn. There's my email. You got more questions, you've got that. Listen to this show and they'll answer a lot of your questions as well. But the core thing to walk away from, of course, is going to be how do I change your mindset? Understand there's no one size fits all. You have to be honest about asking the questions to yourself, but also the networks you're looking at. Always have open, honest communication, once again, with yourself, but also anyone that you're doing business with.
Thanks, Greg. Those are some great parting words. Thank you, everybody, for being here. I hope this was informative and useful. Thank you for your time and have a happy Wednesday. Greg, you and I
Thank
can
you.
connect offline.
Sounds great. Thank you, guys.
Bye, everyone.